I'm Rabbi Mark Dratch, and in the news, the mainstream Orthodox Rabbinical Association here in the United States, the Rabbinical Council of America, referred to as the RCA, has formally voted again to prohibit the ordination of women rabbis and to prohibit the hiring of women rabbis. In other words, the RCA has reaffirmed the traditional perspective of Orthodox Jewry, which rejects the notion of women rabbis. To remind you of the evolution of acceptance by non-Orthodox Jewry regarding women rabbis, it was in 1972 that Sally Priestman became the first woman to be ordained a rabbi by a major movement of Judaism here in America, the Reform movement, as Sally was ordained by the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in Cincinnati. 2 years later, in 1974, Sandy Eisenberg Sasso became the first Reconstructionist woman rabbi. It was not until 1985 that the conservative movement ordained its first woman rabbi, Amy Eilberg. And today, in non-Orthodox synagogues throughout America and in Israel, there are women serving as rabbis and as cantors, and no one gives it a thought. In fact, there have been recent years in which more women have entered the Reform movement's rabbinical school than have men. At the same time, Orthodox Jewry has maintained its opposition to women rabbis for what Orthodox Jews argue is traditional halachic, traditional Jewish law reasons, with one notable exception. Rabbi Avi Weiss, longtime rabbi and Jewish activist who's led and shaped the modern or open Orthodox congregation, the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale in New York, as well as a separate Orthodox rabbinical school, Yeshivat Chovevei Torah in New York, Rabbi Avi Weiss has, in essence, ordained the first Orthodox woman rabbi, Sarah Hurwitz, to whom he ultimately bestowed the title of Rabbah, as a practicing rabbi at the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale. And together with Avi Weiss, Sarah Hurwitz helped to found Yeshivat Maharat, a yeshiva that trains and ordains women to be Orthodox rabbis, with the title not of Rabbah, which proved to be too controversial in many mainstream Orthodox circles, but with the title Maharat, which is an acronym that stands for a female leader of Jewish law, spirituality, and Torah. As the dean of Yeshivat Maharat, Sarah Hurwitz has ordained women rabbis every year. The class of 2015 included 6 most impressive women: Avital Engelberg, who's pursuing a master's in Talmud at Bar-Ilan University; Yafa Epstein, who teaches Talmud at Yeshivat Maharat; Miriam Gonzarska, a Polish Jew who's returned to Warsaw, where she now works as a Jewish educator at the Warsaw Jewish Community Center; Laila Kagedan, who teaches ethics, religion, and education while studying at Harvard; Dr. Melanie Landau, an Australian Jew who lives in Jerusalem, studies at Pardes, and works as a facilitation director at Encounter; and Dr. Anat Sharbat, a Sabra, a native Israeli, who has a PhD in Talmud from Bar-Ilan University and who has served as a rabbinic intern at the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale. So as you can see, in many parts of the Jewish community, women rabbis and cantors are a fact of Jewish life which no longer is experienced as surprising or objectionable. But in the mainstream Orthodox community, there continues to be a very different attitude. And again, last week, the Rabbinical Council of America, the mainstream umbrella organization of Orthodox rabbis in this country, reaffirmed its opposition to ordaining or hiring women rabbis. To some extent, it's assumed in reaction to Yeshivat Maharat and Avi Weiss's ordaining women Orthodox rabbis. Well, to expand on the thinking of the RCA, I'm extremely pleased to have on our JBS phones from New York City a friend for whom I have the highest level of admiration and respect, Rabbi Mark Dratch, the Executive Vice President of the Rabbinical Council of America. And for a number of years, Mark Dratch and I shared rabbinic fellowship in Connecticut, where he was the rabbi of Agudas Shalom in Stamford. And Mark then went on to do some extraordinary work as the founder of J-Safe, the Jewish Institute supporting an abuse-free environment, which pays special attention to the abuse of women. And then in 2012, Mark Dratch was named the Executive Vice President of the RCA, the Rabbinical Council of America. And Mark, it's a pleasure to welcome you to JBS.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I've watched you often, and now it's a pleasure to speak with you on the air.
Thank you so much. So, Mark, why did the RCA feel it was necessary now to reaffirm its opposition to both the ordination and the hiring of women rabbis?
This is an issue, as you mentioned, that it defines the traditional Orthodox community. We've had a number of resolutions over the years in response to certain events as they unfolded. In the last year, there were a number of schools and rabbis that were offering ordination to women under an Orthodox context, not just Rabbi Weiss, but in Israel there were a number of them as well. And it was a feeling amongst membership as our annual resolutions process came about, a feeling among a number of our members that it was important for the organization to reassert itself and reassert its position. And as a result of that, this resolution was passed.
Mark, can you explain your understanding of halakha, Jewish law, as it applies to women serving as rabbis?
Well, I don't think we have quite enough time to go through all the nuance, but clearly the role of women and opportunities for women within the Orthodox community have evolved in the modern time. Whereas historically women were not given opportunities for formal education, that's not the case across the board from far right to far left. Within the modern Orthodox community, under the tutelage of Rabbi Soloveitchik, women were given the opportunity to study Talmud at high levels and to pursue advanced study. And so while this is happening now at Stern College, at Yeshiva University, and in many important institutions throughout Israel and in the United States, we're in a very wonderful opportunity. Women have a very wonderful opportunity now to do those types of things. And other types of things as well. Women as teachers and as authors and et cetera. These types of things have occurred and continue to evolve. At the same time, the Orthodox community is a very traditional community and sees the importance of, I guess you would call it, of holy continuity in the structure of society, in the structure of our communities, of our synagogues. Gender difference and gender differentiation is an important part of halakha, of Jewish law, as it was established and as it evolved over the centuries, over the millennia. And I think that's really where you see the issue, where bringing women into classical, historical, halachic male roles is the crux of the issue for us.
Okay, Mark, I think it's important to say that non-Orthodox Jews really have no business, no right to criticize Orthodox Jews for any stance they take on any aspect of Jewish law. It really is a function of Jewish hubris, arrogance, ignorance, and intolerance. The Jewish community does have a right, it seems to me, to understand what the overall embrace of Orthodox Jewry is to what we generally call modernity, and there are many ways in which members of the RCA do not resemble in style the traditional black hat models associated with Orthodoxy. There are differences between mainstream Orthodox congregations and Haredi extreme Orthodox congregations. And one of the issues where it is most compelling has to do with the role and place of Jewish women in Orthodox life. So I'm sort of asking you to explain in general what you feel the attitude regarding women specifically is that is different from the non-Orthodox view of women that does pervade Orthodoxy today.
Well, I think that we're in a state of flux and a state of challenge. I think each of us, Orthodox and non-Orthodox, and all those on the entire spectrum of the Orthodox community, are challenged and in dialogue with modernity and with modern values and modern ideas. And those ideas often challenge us. And we're in a dialogue, in a debate, in a struggle sometimes with values and ideas coming from the modern world that may or may not resonate with us, that may challenge some of our preconceived ideas and commitments. And I think you see within the Orthodox community different points along the spectrum of orthodoxy that respond differently, that may be more open or more rejecting of some of these types of things. I think the whole challenge of greater opportunities for women and of feminism over the last number of decades has been something which has been a very large challenge for the Orthodox world. The more right you go on the spectrum, the more they have just rejected that out of hand. And the more to the center or to the left, there's more of a greater understanding, and it helps to inform our attitudes and ideas. And I think certainly within the modern Orthodox world, appreciating and respecting and encouraging women to find expression, certainly outside of the context of the synagogue and of traditional Jewish life, has been embraced by many, if not by all, but certainly by the overwhelming majority within the modern Orthodox community. And I think the struggles that we have within the faith community, within the synagogue community, are the types of things that you're seeing now.
Yes.
Struggling to try to hold on to the sense of tradition and the traditional structure of the community, and at the same time creating opportunities for people of goodwill, of passion, of commitment, and of competence to make their contributions.
I think you say it very, very well. And again, my own feeling is if there are men and women who are comfortable in an Orthodox synagogue in an Orthodox setting, there's no reason for any non-Orthodox Jew to be critical. There's, however, at the same time, so much misunderstanding, Mark. And, most Jews believe the Torah forbids women from being called to the Torah. And in Tractate Megillah, a tractate of the Talmud, it explicitly states that women may be called to the Torah unless doing so violates the dignity of the congregation. Is it possible in your mind for an Orthodox community today to say that its calling a woman to the Torah does not violate its sense of dignity? And in such an instance, would such an Orthodox congregation be following Jewish law, even if it did call women to the Torah? From the RCA perspective, could an Orthodox congregation argue that with Jewish halachic integrity?
So the answer to them, you're seeing expressions of that within the larger Orthodox context in what's now being referred to as a partnership minyanim, of calling women to the Torah for an aliyah, giving her an opportunity to lead certain parts of the service and not others based upon a very strict reading of Jewish law. That is not the consensus of the rabbis of the RCA. That's not a consensus of our teachers and and those at the yeshiva who are our instructors and to whom we look for guidance as well. It's probably too technical for a conversation now. What exactly the dignity of the community means, which community you're talking about, is it a specific community that's gathering in a particular place at a particular time? Does it refer to the community at large, or all part of a larger discussion and debate with regard to this topic? Mm-hmm. But there's a certain sense of the dignity and of the comportment of a congregation and its service that I think this is not accepted in the mainstream Orthodox community.
Yes, I understand that. I was asking a slightly different question, though. I was asking if there were an Orthodox synagogue which said this does not violate our dignity, would the RCA say for that congregation they still are following halakha? Or do you feel that in some way what you call here the consensus of the Orthodox community, especially as reflected by the RCA, that in some way you would want a congregation, even if it felt that calling a woman to the Torah did not violate its dignity, you would still want that Orthodox synagogue to follow the consensus of what halakha is today? Again,
the consensus of halachic authorities, of the rabbis the members of our organization and our halachic authorities do not accept the possibility of a woman having an aliyah in an Orthodox synagogue.
Even though Talmud tractate Megillah says that a woman is permitted to be called to the Torah if it does not violate the dignity of the congregation. It's
not clear exactly what that phrase means. There are many, many opinions over the centuries as to exactly what that means. My sense of dignity is not violated if a woman runs for president of the United States, or as a member of the Supreme Court, or as a lawyer or a doctor. My own personal position as a female. So what exactly that term means in its context and its application within the synagogue is not clear. Nevertheless, and I don't want to be in a position on your show or reading anybody out of the Orthodox community. Nevertheless, again, the consensus is that that's not something which is acceptable. I'm not here to define exactly who is in and who is out with regard to these practices.
All right. I understand. Again, you say it very, very well. I want you to speak now in terms of the general impression in the Jewish community as a whole. You heard me say a moment ago, I think it's inappropriate for a non-Orthodox Jew to suggest and be critical in some way of Orthodox Jews who choose to follow halakha in a different way. I just think that there has to be understanding that as non-Orthodox Jews sort of want there to be an area in which their integrity and their dignity is respected in the overall Jewish world, they certainly, the non-Orthodox community has an absolute responsibility to extend the same thing to the Orthodox community. At the same time, there are people who are asking you, as a leader of Orthodox Jewry today, and again, this is a mainstream Orthodox organization, the RCA. To what extent are you, and again, this is a devil's advocate question, Mark, to what extent does Orthodox Jewry create stumbling blocks for the future of Jewish life in general when it seems to be reluctant to embrace attitudes which reflect the thinking of serious, committed Jews on such social issues as how do you incorporate women into mainstream Jewish life? When you hear people argue, not in a sort of abusive fashion, not as a put-down, but they argue that if you care about the future of American Jewish life and you care about the vitality of Judaism going forward, there has to be accommodations and changes made, and there have been changes made throughout Jewish history, that there should be changes made that are more embracing of an egalitarian approach to Judaism. When you hear those arguments, and you hear them all the time, Mark, what's your response?
I would say there's a few responses. Number one is that, in general, Orthodox Judaism, which is a traditional expression of religion and of Jewish life, is countercultural in many ways, whether it's on the women's issue, whether it's on sexual mores, in terms of premarital sex or other types of things. And in many other types of issues, our feeling and our position is that we are representing an authentic or the authentic interpretation and application of Torah and its values over the generations. So when things around us change, they challenge us to think. They challenge us to incorporate those things that we feel are in consonance with traditional Jewish values and Torah values, but certainly they're not dictated by them. So the issue, for example, of egalitarianism, which is very important today in the larger community, is not a halachic principle. Mm-hmm. So our struggle is to try in appreciating and recognizing and respecting new opportunities, the passion, the commitment, the intelligence, the contributions that others can make that don't fit into a traditional framework. How can we work within that framework to carve out new opportunities so we maintain this sense of sacred continuity? Mm-hmm. So I think that's answer number one.
I appreciate that very much. Look, Mark, Avi Weiss has withdrawn his membership in the RCA. I have no idea what your personal relationship is with him as an individual. I have no idea, what you feel about him personally. And if you want to tell me, you can. But how at the moment is the RCA relating to Avi Weiss as an Orthodox rabbi at Hebrew Institute of Riverdale and also at Yeshivat Chovevei Torah? What's your formal position?
Well, I would argue as follows. First of all, I know Rabbi Weiss for many, many years from the time I was a rabbinical student. And we've had a relationship, and I respect many of the wonderful things that he's done in terms of Jewish activism and in prodding the Orthodox community and the larger Jewish community to step up to the plate on many important issues. Every time I see him, as I'm sure every time you see him, I get a big hug.
Absolutely.
So, right? So
yes.
It's not about Avi as Avi as a person, as an individual.
Exactly.
That being said, this statement of the RCA, which is getting a lot of attention, is nothing new.
No, it's
that anybody is surprised by it is very surprising to me.
Right.
This is maintaining the status quo.
Yes.
So the question really is not the question to me. The question is really needs to be posed to those who are challenging the status quo in terms of what they expect from the mainstream community that is following principles that it feels has been established for generations and continues to follow in those footsteps. In
your mind, Mark, you don't expect there to be any mainstream Orthodox congregation hiring rabbis ordained by Yeshivat Chovevei Torah, correct?
Well, they have 100 graduates that are serving the Jewish community in all kinds of capacities.
But not as Orthodox rabbis?
As Orthodox rabbis.
In mainstream Orthodox RCA congregations?
Well, there's no such thing as an RCA congregation per se.
Yes.
But with those congregations that would identify with the RCA, there are some Chovevei ordains that are serving as Orthodox rabbis in those congregations.
Okay. You do not foresee in the immediate future any graduates of the Rabbinical School, Yeshivat Maharat, taking on not rabbinical roles, but educational roles, supplemental roles in any mainstream Orthodox synagogue?
I guess that remains to be seen. If you look carefully at the resolution and the way it was worded, the resolution doesn't oppose these very competent women from serving in Orthodox institutions. The opposition is the use of the title and the use of and being appointed into a rabbinic position.
Yes.
And I would argue, look, to a certain degree, we have no control over those congregations. The RCA is a rabbinic organization. We don't control congregations. We don't assign rabbis to congregations. There are many congregations that look to rabbis with RCA membership because it helps define who the rabbi is and where he stands within the Orthodox community. But congregations are independent and can do their own thing.
Mark, it's wonderful to have a moment to speak with you again. I want you in studio soon where we can really talk about larger issues. But I believe you're doing extraordinary work on behalf of the Jewish people, the Jewish community, the state of Israel. And I appreciate your time very, very much. Kol tuv v'hatzlacha. You keep fighting the good fight, Mark.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Be well.
Bye.
The thoughts of Mark Dratch, Executive Vice President of the Rabbinical Council of America, the mainstream organization of Orthodox rabbis here in the United States. And Mark explains the RCA position. As we mentioned, in some way the RCA is reacting to Rabbi Avi Weiss. In a moment, Avi Weiss joins us. Please stay with us.
Did you miss a program on JBS you really wanted to see? Well, if you use the internet, it's so easy to watch almost any JBS program whenever you want to. Simply Google the name of the guest or program you'd like to watch and add JBS, and presto, the program should pop up on your screen. Missed our exclusive coverage of Bret Stephens on his new book, America in Retreat? Google Bret Stephens, JBS, and there it is. Missed Ari Shavit's in-depth interview on L'chaim? Google Ari Shavit, L'chaim, JBS, and there it is. Want to watch JBS's tour of Karnei Shomron? Google Karnei Shomron, JBS, and it pops right up. So don't forget to set your DVR to record your favorite JBS programs. But remember, JBS programs on demand are only a click away. JBS, expanding Jewish understanding.
I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, again, the Rabbinical Council of America, the RCA, the mainstream rabbinical organization of Orthodox rabbis here in the United States, formally voted again, and the vote was to prohibit the ordination of women rabbis and to prohibit the hiring of women rabbis. And as we explained, there are many who believe this was a reaction to some of the work done by one of the premier rabbis on the American scene today. You've seen him, you've heard him here on JBS. You know I have a profound connection to this man. Rabbi Avi Weiss, rabbi of the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale, the founder of Yeshivat Chovevei Torah, a rabbinical school dedicated to open orthodoxy. And in addition to being perhaps the foremost activist rabbi in America, Avi Weiss has had the courage to ordain the first woman rabbi in the Orthodox movement, Rabbah Sarah Hurwitz. And with Rabbah Hurwitz, Avi Weiss founded Yeshivat Maharat, the first Orthodox rabbinical school for women. Avi Weiss is also renowned for his extraordinary work championing the cause of Soviet Jewry before it became part of the mainstream Jewish agenda. And his recent book, Open Up the Iron Door, is an exquisite memoir of the Jewish struggle to save Soviet Jewry. Avi Weiss, thank you for joining us.
My great pleasure, Mark. Wonderful to be with you.
So, Avi, first of all, you saw the vote that was taken by the Rabbinical Council of America. There are many people who feel it is in some way a reaction to what you tried to do by opening up first the Yeshivat Chovevei Torah to a different orientation in general, and then specifically to Yeshivat Maharat and the fact that you have ordained a woman rabbi and that the Yeshivat Maharat ordains women rabbis every year. And Avi, my understanding is you decided to actually withdraw your membership in the RCA. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
In general, I want you to talk for a moment about how you feel the RCA's attitude affects Orthodox Jewry in general. How have you responded to it? And explain to us why you felt it was necessary to personally withdraw from the RCA.
Well, the primary reason for my withdrawal from the RCA is that it's an organization that has refused to recognize the graduates, the students who are ordained in Yeshivat Chovevei Torah, who are just the most magnificent young men who are impacting upon the Jewish community and the larger world in such a powerful way throughout the world. By this June, there'll be over 100 rabbis from Yeshivat Chovevei Torah in synagogues, on campuses, in schools, modern Orthodox schools, in pluralistic schools, in national organizations. And the yeshiva is doing just magnificently. It's now led by its new president. I'm fond of saying that if success is measured by who your successor is, this was my finest moment 2 years ago when Rabbi Asher Lopatin, who's leading the yeshiva in an unparalleled way, he now serves as president of the yeshiva, and of course its brilliant Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Dov Linzer. And the jewels of the school are its students. And when the RCA did not accept these students into their membership, I felt it was time to leave. And there's now a new, modern, and open Orthodox rabbinic organization, and that is the International Rabbinic Fellowship, which has over 200 spiritual leaders who are members.
By the way, Avi, when we spoke with Mark Dratch, one of the things he told me was that there are mainstream Orthodox synagogues all over America who do have rabbis that have been ordained by Yeshivat Chovevei Torah. So on the one hand, the RCA is taking a formal position which does not reflect what's happening on the ground in Orthodox synagogues throughout America, correct?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. There are Chovevei rabbis in major synagogues throughout North America. The largest Mechitza shul in North America is Shar Shamayim in Montreal, and the senior rabbi there is Rabbi Adam Shire. He is a rabbi from Chovevei. The modern Orthodox rabbis in in Birmingham, Alabama, in Nashville, Tennessee, in New Orleans, in Cleveland, in Los Angeles, in Berkeley. I can go on, in Austin, Texas. They are in OU, Orthodox Union synagogues, and they come from Chovevei Torah. So despite the fact that we're not members in the RCA, notwithstanding our graduates are serving in some of the most important synagogues. They're serving in some of the most important Hillels around the country. The new director of the UCLA Hillel, Rabbi Aaron Lerner, is out of Chovevei Torah, a consortium of Chicago schools. Rabbi Seth Winberg, the rabbi at Harvard University, Daniel Passauer, is from Chovevei Torah, and also serving as headmasters of school now. The headmaster of the Oakland Day School is a Chovevei graduate, Rabbi Ari Lubitz, and also making tremendous inroads in pluralistic schools. The co-head of Judaic Studies at the Heschel High School, which is one of the great pluralistic schools in the country, Rabbi Benji Schiller, is a graduate of Chovevei Torah. And the students are also serving in major national organizations. Rabbi Ben Berger works as Rabbi Elke Abramson's assistant at Wexner. There are so many different organizations. A student, Rabbi Avi Weiss, was at Birthright Next until most recently. And the list goes on and on. And now Maharat, the school that ordains women, which is a separate independent school from Yeshivat Chovevei Torah, led by Rabbi Sarah Hurwitz, whom you've interviewed many times. There are already 12 women who've been ordained, and 6 are serving in synagogues around the country, in Washington, D.C., in Los Angeles, in New York, in Montreal. So thank God we've had, with God's help, significant success.
I want you to help me and the audience understand the extent to which this is really ideological, and I say this very quietly because there's cynicism behind this question. To what extent is it institutional? What does the RCA have halachically in terms of Jewish law? Why would they? What's their objection to the smicha given by Yeshivat Chovevei Torah or Avi? Is this really some kind of institutional battle where it's about a rivalry and a jealousy and worrying about who gets jobs and who doesn't get jobs? Is it about money, or is it about legitimate ideological differences?
Well, first let me say that the RCA has been quoted as saying that their resolution is in response to new ordination programs in Israel. That's what the Jewish Week reported. The Jewish Week reported that the executive director of the Rabbinical Council of America said that this resolution is in response to institutions in Israel that are ordaining women. And then the Jewish Week goes on to say that the spokesperson of the RCA went on to say that he specifically had in mind Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, who is, according to the Jewish Week, is ordaining women. This is at least what the Jewish Week said. And it also has in mind Rabbi Herzl Hefter, who's at Yeshivat Harel. I know that he's ordaining women. He actually calls the women graduates rabbis, and at least that's what the Jewish Week said. And it's good to be in the company of Rabbi Herzl Hefter and Rabbi Riskin. Rabbi Riskin is an iconic figure.
Of course. And
Rabbi Hefter is one of the great students of the late, great Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein, and actually taught smicha students studying for ordination at Yeshiva University in the Grus Center in Israel. So he has a tremendous background. And according to the report, while the resolution mentioned Maharat specifically, according to this article, the RCA said that it's in direct response to these new ordination programs. So we're not the only institution ordaining women. There are others.
Okay, but I still want to come back to my question. Is it ideological, or are there other issues at play? And if it is ideology, I want to know how you answer it. People who, I speak to a Mark Dratch, and his view is, look, traditional halakha doesn't permit women rabbis, and therefore, as a mainstream Orthodox organization, we're not going to permit either the ordination or the hiring of women rabbis. Now, they have a halachic view. I want to know the extent to which you simply say, I respect their right to have their view, but I disagree for the following reasons. Or I'm asking you, Avi, you have dealt with the realities of Jewish life your entire career. Is there something here that has less to do with the principles of halakha? And are you and Rabbi Shlomo Riskin in Israel and the other rabbis you mentioned, and again, we saw you and Riskin are singled out by some of the extreme Orthodox elements in Israel who have said that your conversions will not be accepted. And there was a big hubbub about that, and I believe it was resolved in your favor. But Avi, you are, and so is Riskin, and so are the colleagues that you associate with. You're in some way a lightning rod, and I often feel it has less to do with authentic halachic dispute and more to do with the extent to which you have been very successful in motivating and exciting and in generating an enthusiasm for Judaism, which is without question within the Orthodox world. But at the same time, it is what you have now coined, and you should get credit for this term. It used to be called modern Orthodoxy. Everywhere you go now, it's called open Orthodoxy, and Avi Weiss argued for that as a better phrase than modern Orthodoxy. But what you have created is an open Orthodoxy, which seems to institutionally, structurally threaten some in the more, for lack of a better term, traditional wing of the Orthodox mainstream movement. So I'm asking you again now, what's your feel? What's the real emes about what's really driving people to want to come after you and to isolate you and to isolate Yeshivat Chovevei Torah and to, marginalize Yeshivat Maharat? What's your sense of it?
I'm not sure. You'd have to ask them. I know what they're doing. I'm not in their heads. I just don't know. You'd have to ask what their motivation is. What I do know is that to be the subject of these resolutions, this is, I think, the second or third time that the RCA has issued this kind of resolution. It's an indication that we're doing very well, that there is a sense that we've become stronger. And this is not about me. This is so far, far beyond me. This is about Yeshivat Maharat, which is now led by Rabbi Sarah Horowitz, the first Orthodox woman to be ordained. It's led by Rabbi Jeffrey Fox. It's Rosh HaYeshiva. And, of course, it's a separate institution, but there's a Yeshivat Chovevei Torah, which is independent. It's a separate institution from Maharat. It's led by Rabbi Lopatin and by, I think, an unparalleled Rosh HaYeshiva, Rabbi Dov Linzer. So I really want to make it clear, this is not about me.
Absolutely.
The power of this, the power of what's happening is that there are students who are out there who are rabbis.
Yes.
And our goal is not to control these students, but to empower these students. Our goal of leadership is not to create followers, but leaders. All I can tell you is that when you look at the halakha, it is very, very clear in the halakha that women can be ordained. It's clear that women can ordain. I think your listeners must understand that ordination does not date back to Sinai, to the Sinaitic revelation. That line was broken in the time of Hillel II in the 4th century. Rather, as is codified in our Shulchan Aruch, in our Code of Jewish Law, the Ramah, now I'm quoting, he says that one has the ability to be a decisor of Jewish law with the permission of one's teacher. This means, now, I finished the quote, but what this means is that ordination today signals that a person has mastered a particular area of halakha, and that you can be a decisor of Jewish law in contemporary times, and no less a figure than the previous Sephardi chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Bakshi Taron. He wrote in one of his responses, and here I'm quoting, "Women can be the greats of the generation." His words, the gedolim of the generation and serve as halachic decisors. And I put it out there, and I welcome to debate anyone on this issue. That debate concerning women's ordination today is not halachic. It's not a religio-legal debate. It's rather sociological. And here I believe the Orthodox community is split. There are those like the RCA, on the Orthodox right, who say we're not ready. Others in the more open camp, like myself, we disagree. And I have this question to ask, which I spelled out in a column in the Jewish Week that's appearing this week. I wrote, why for many is women's learning, Zionism, and secular studies compatible with the Masorah, with the tradition, while the ordination of women is not? What does it say about our community when a central, unchanging value of our Masorah is the exclusion of women from religious leadership? That's what I don't get. If you're going to follow the thinking of the RCA that everything that is new is prohibited because it's not in our tradition, well, women learning Torah was introduced by none other than the great Chafetz Chaim by Sarah Schneer in the beginning of the 20th century. It was Rabbi Soloveitchik himself who introduced institutional learning of Gemara when I was at Stern College, when Rabbi Saul Byrne was the chairman of the Judaic Studies Department. And what about Zionism? The RCA, of course, embraces Zionism. Well, there are many in the more right-wing community who says we can't embrace Zionism. That is contrary to our tradition, or the embrace of secular studies. Or today, of course, there was a time when one could marry more than one woman. Now, of course, it's prohibited. So while there was a tradition, for example, that a divorce could be given to a woman whether she complies, agrees, or not, now, of course, that is not the case. So Masorah, tradition, doesn't mean that you're cemented in the past. That's only one half of the equation. It's a mistake to think that Masorah, tradition, only means that everything we do today is cemented in the past. As I write in this week's column, that Masorah conveys the idea that within proper parameters we should innovate to address the issues of our time. And I argue that this innovation is not straying from tradition, it's not straying from the Masorah, but in fact it's a celebration. It's a celebration of the Masorah.
I love you so much, and I want to get you into the studio where I can ask you a million questions and let you amplify on the theme you have just discussed. I only have a moment left with you, Avi. To what extent is this entire flap? They take a vote in the RCA, and to what extent does it have any impact on what you are doing, what your colleagues are doing? By the way, you give a lot of credit to people who deserve credit, but the audience understands you're the genesis of it, and no one will ever, that is forever. And what you have done to contribute to Jewish life goes far beyond the Orthodox movement and open Orthodoxy that you represent. So I'm always honored to be able to say that to you in public. But the real question here is, does this vote by the RCA have any impact on you and your colleagues and what you're doing in open Orthodoxy? Is it purely symbolic? And do you say to yourself, I wish they hadn't done it because why make an issue? But in reality, it has no practical significance at all. What's your answer?
It's the latter, that since this resolution was spelled out, we have received an overwhelming response of support. It has been overwhelming, a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous response. And our response at Yeshivat Maharat is to continue changing the facts on the ground. I don't believe that this resolution is going to have impact. I think quite the contrary. I think it's going to be strengthening what we're doing. And our response is, as I've just said, is to change the facts on the ground, to continue recruiting, to continue training, and to continue placing open Orthodox, real modern Orthodox spiritual leaders all over the country.
Well, I want you to go from strength to strength. I love you so much. Congratulations on Open Up the Iron Door. But Avi,
Thank you.
you've got to come in and sit with me in studio in the very near future. I know you're going to go to Florida sometime. I have to get you in here before you go. Will you say yes?
The answer, of course, is yes. I feel a special connection to you. And when I stepped back from the synagogue as senior rabbi, and incidentally, this is what I'm proudest of, that now at our synagogue we have one of the great rabbinic lights in the country, whose installation, by the way, we're celebrating a week from Saturday night, Rabbi Stephen Exler. I get emotional when I talk about him. He's just so outstanding. That's the power of what we're doing, that there are so many voices out there who continue to live and breathe this message. But when I said that I'm stepping back and that Rabbi Exler was stepping in, and when I said that, by the way, standing ovation from a packed shul. But I think my best line in that talk, if I must say, and there are not many good lines that I say, but the best line was that I want to retire the word retire. I'm not retired. There's so much more to do. And I think this concept of an orthodoxy that is not rigid, an orthodoxy that, on the one hand, Mark, I believe no less in the divinity of the Torah than those on the Orthodox right.
I know.
I believe in it. I am committed to the detailed observance and the practice of Jewish law. But with all my heart and soul, I say that such a faith commitment does not have to translate into rigidity. That we believe in an orthodoxy that empowers women to be more involved in Jewish ritual and spiritual leadership, that invites religious questioning, that promotes dialogue across the Jewish denominations, that welcomes all people regardless of sexual orientation or their level of religious observance. I guess I would sum it up that it's an orthodoxy that looks outward, driven by a sense of responsibility to all people. And with God's help, and with the help of so many wonderful people in all of these institutions, we'll go from strength to strength.
Beautifully said. By the way, I also want Stephen to come in here and give me a chance to introduce him to the JBS audience. But I thank you so much, my dear friend. You be well. We will call you. We'll set up a time for you to come in. In the meantime, Kol Tuva Hatzlacha, you never will. I will not let you retire, Avi Weiss. So you just keep going.
I keep underscoring that this is about so many people who are making such extraordinary contributions, and that's what's key. That this is rooted institutionally, and something unbelievable is happening right before our eyes. And may all of the graduates who are out there teaching and touching souls and lives, may they be blessed for all the great things that they're doing. That's what I don't get about the RCA. If I was in the RCA and I saw Yeshivat Chovevei Torah and these extraordinary men, the RCA is an organization that only has men in it. If I would see that, I would be jumping for joy. I would not be waiting for Chovevei to come to the RCA. I'd go to Chovevei Torah. I'd visit the Bet Midrash. I would do anything possible to bring these extraordinary men into the organization. But they've chosen not to, and they're the worse off for it. I think they're the ones who are suffering most from not welcoming them in.
Avi, you be well. Kol Tuva Hatzlacha. We will speak and we will sit together very soon. You're doing fabulous, fabulous work, my friend.
Shalom, shalom, shalom.
Be well. The thoughts of Avi Weiss, Rabbi of the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale, and the founder of Yeshivat Chovevei Torah, again, a rabbinical school dedicated to what Avi calls open orthodoxy. And you heard me say at the beginning that, you've heard me say, I really do not think anybody has the right to criticize Orthodox Jewish men or women who are comfortable with a traditional form of orthodoxy in which women have different roles and a different visibility and different opportunities for expression within Orthodox communities. But then you hear an Avi Weiss, and he is a profoundly committed Jew, profoundly committed to halakha and to Jewish law and to orthodoxy, and he's created an alternative. And I agree with him. I wish that the world at large, every aspect of our Jewish world, could embrace open orthodoxy as a valid expression of the Torah and covenant made at Sinai. And so it's an honor to present him to you on JBS. As always, my thanks to Sloan Copeland, our director, production coordinator Serge Goldberg, JBS's associate director, Dara Golub, and to our producer for In the News, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.